It's Finn. Resident Evil's 30th anniversary is upon us, and as many choose to return to looking at the game that started it all, I set my eyes on a different game, the game that intended to take the series back to its roots. 2017's Resident Evil Biohazard released 5 years after the critically panned Resident Evil 6. Fans and critics alike often cited how the series had done away with its survival horror roots and instead grown into a pure action series. This started with Resident Evil 4 but got worse and more extreme by the time we reached Resident Evil 6, so 5 years after, Capcom themselves decided to chop down this action tree they'd created and see if those roots truly did hold the magic these fans have been craving for. But were they successful in this? Was Resident Evil 7 truly able to return us to the origins of the series? Or did they try to hold on to some of the remains of the action era that Capcom yearned to escape from? I say we find out. This is Resident Evil 7. The game opens us driving down a mysterious part of the woods to search for a woman named Mia. We take a stroll through the trees and begin to already see that something is not quite right. Birds feeding on corpses, a mysterious man walking around completely calm, and Mia's driving license being burned upon a freshly extinguished flame. Entering the home, it appears to be abandoned. Food rots around us, newspaper clippings can be seen from years ago dotted around the place. There appears to be nowhere to go, but after finding a secret room, we enter the basement of the house, which is in a severe case of flooding, and someone's taken the liberty of leaving a corpse in the water. Encouraging, certainly. We find Mia locked in a cell, and she further adds to the horror on display by calling another man Daddy in front of us, and leading us out of the room to what appears to be a dead end, until suddenly we hear a loud crash coming from the other room, where Mia is now missing, and there's a hole in the wall. Further searching the house, we hear a loud bang coming from the same stairs we just walked up, making the much braver choice than I would make. We investigate the stairs to see something slowly clawing its way up, until being revealed to be Mia, who looks almost possessed. This segment is very reminiscent of the first zombie reveal from Resident Evil 1, having the enemy slowly reveal itself to the player while building tension until a sudden reveal of the face of the monster before throwing the player straight into action. We fight off Mia and choose a method a bit more excessive than therapy recommends for dealing with domestic measures, as suddenly the silence is cut out by the sound of a phone ringing in the other room. We answer, and we're told the obvious, that we need to leave, and as we go back down the corridor we notice Mia's gone. We find a fuse to turn the power onto the attic stairs in order to make our escape, as we are suddenly ambushed by Mia. She gets revenge for the axe to the neck using a chainsaw to the hand. Quite the effective comeback on her behalf. Moving upstairs, we arm ourselves the true American way as we head towards the exit, but the incoming sound of a chainsaw revving approaches from the same door we were about to leave. Mia falls from that door, and once again we must fight her off, with Mia now seemingly dead, the exit destroyed. A silence sets in, as we wonder, what do we do next? When we're suddenly welcomed to the family. This whole section is an amazing opening to the game. While it feels like it's taken notes from more recent horror games, such as Outlast with its first-person perspective and slow build-up of tension, but it certainly sets the precedent that Capcom fully intended to try restoring the horror back to a series that had lost its way. If I had to nitpick, the only negatives I would say for this segment is it's not really replay-friendly. It's quite slow burn when knowing anything is going to happen. It can make wanting to replay the game feel like a bit of a drag initially. We awaken to see our hand has been stapled back on and we're sat around the table having a dinner with the family we were forcefully inducted into. This scene serves as a perfect introduction to the family as a whole. Jack, the strongest, the leader of the group, sits head of the table. He has the most authority here. Marguerite, a deranged, angry character, who appears to have quite an interesting sense of language. Lucas, who instantly seems the most crazy. The way he takes joy in seeing his hand get cut off, but also sprinkles his more serious nature as he takes note of the interruption outside and instantly begins scheming. And Granny, who is stoned, just like every time we see her in the game. We escape from the room and are pursued by Jack. Introducing a stalker enemy could be seen as taking influence from recent horror games like Alien Isolation or Outlast, as stalker enemies have become quite the norm around the time of this game's release. But personally, I see this as going back to the roots of the series, as I'd say this pays homage to Resident Evil 2's stalker enemy, Mr. X. And if you want more proof of this, Jack has a special animation where he's able to smash through the family room if the player successfully leads him away. And it's oddly reminiscent of what Mr. X did in that second game. But after escaping Jack, we meet up with a cop at the window and we're given a pocket knife, which we use to immediately enter the garage because apparently Ethan lacks the ability to remove tape with his bare hands. Within here, Jack instantly takes out the cop and we have a fight in our hands. This fight's really interesting as it gives us 2 ways to complete it. We can either go the classic style, which is a shootout against Jack, or for a much easier experience, we can find ourselves some car keys and use the car before Jack gets a chance to reach it. But upon the end of the fight, Jack shows us something wonderful and we are able to enter the main hall of the house. Within the main hall, we're easily able to draw the most parallels to the original Resident Evil. The player is faced by many different paths, each of them leading to a locked door halting the player's progress. This is exactly like the opening gameplay of the first game, where the game has the player scavenge for keys around the mansion in order to make progress. Further exploring the Baker house, we can see it's left almost in a time capsule of its previous self. Pictures line the walls, the house is decorated with trophies, and achievements making it clear these people who are out to hurt you weren't always this way, and something must have made them this way. During our exploration, we are yet again called by Zoe, who gives us an objective to find 3 keys and use them to escape the main house. We also encounter Jack yet again, who has seemingly risen from the dead and is once again here to pursue the player. We solve our first puzzle of the game, being the silhouette on the wall. The wall opens up similar to the mansion contraptions that would be found within the first game. Now, pushed further into the house, we enter a room covered head to toe in mould. As we seek to push through, a towering monster suddenly appears from the wall, showing us the Bakers aren't the only things roaming this house. After either running or fighting off the monster, we head down to the basement, where apparently this family has a morgue, where we solve a fairly simple puzzle in order to open up the path to the dissection room. Entering the dissection room, we see the piece that we need to escape the house, but Jack takes it and places it down in order to create a trap for us. Clearly forgetting how it ended last time Jack tried to fight me, he decided he wants to have another go. While this boss fight is quite fun, there's no denying that the whole thing is a set piece of the player using the chains in order to create the most epic fight that Capcom could picture. Winning the fight, Jack explodes, and if the player has not found the other heads, they can now go back and explore the house in peace. If I'm entirely honest, I feel in a manner of speaking the game blew its load too fast here. It robs us of a constant threat within the house, which leads to the game feeling too silent, as the player left getting the other heads until after dealing with Jack. But before we do leave the house, I'd like to draw your attention to the shotgun puzzle. This is the clearest example of Capcom attempting to bring the game back to its roots, as they have literally pulled the shotgun puzzle from the first game. It could be argued this could be seen as lazy by just pulling on nostalgia, but I think this is the only time the game truly does this, and I see it more as a cool reference than a straight up lot of nostalgia bait. But moving on, we make it out of the house and head into the RV, where we're given our new main objective: go to the old house, search for information regarding the serum in order to save Mia. Entering the old house, instantly parallels can be drawn to the guardhouse in the original Resident Evil. The guardhouse was a player where the area went straight after escaping the mansion. Entering there, the player entered a building in severe disrepair. Planted on many of the walls are wasp nests to impede the player's progress. In addition to this, spiders were introduced as an enemy within this area, further adding to insect themes. Now, in Resident Evil 7, the old house follows straight after escaping the main house. We find ourselves in a building in severe disrepair. Yet again, wasp nests are used to impede the player's progress as they work their way around, and insects take a big part in the theme in here as well, as they can be found crawling all around the walls of the building. Within the old house, the game introduced us a new sort of stalker enemy. Marguerite roams the halls of the old house and can command bugs to charge at the player, so you may think the gameplay may shift in favour here to a stealth approach. But the player can very quickly just shoot at her, which will cause us to flee and leave the player alone yet again for the entire segment, which does steal the player yet again of a constant threat. But after the player works their way to the other side of the house, Marguerite once again appears, pushing the player into a crater, where the player is forced into the world's easiest boss fight before she just kind of falls in the pit herself, and we're able to leave. Going upstairs, we are hit with the realisation that we need the lamp that Marguerite has been carrying around this whole time. As we head back to the pit, we see an arm reach out and take it. Personally, I feel the game wastes this setup by showing the player the form that Marguerite has taken on. I feel as though the player was not left to wonder long enough what they're about to face. It could have built some much better tension, but by immediately showing her form, we don't get the built-up tension of being like, what was that arm? But making our way into the greenhouse that has just opened up, we're ambushed by Marguerite, who has taken on a spider-like form. This boss fight has all the ingredients to make it perfect. We have a genuinely scary enemy, along with a compact space that thematically fits the boss's theme, but the fight very quickly becomes a waiting sim as we wait for the boss to appear just so we can fight them. After dealing some damage, they'll flee, and yet again we go back to waiting for them to reappear. Rinse and repeat until the boss is dead and we obtain the lamp. Going back to the place we need to place the lamp, we slap it down, and from this point the game introduces the horror trope I really hate. This being introduced in a little girl as the antagonist, I personally find it one of the most overused tropes in horror, and it really brings down this game. But we grab the first part of the serum, return to the RV to find out Lucas has kidnapped Zoe and Mia, and wants to take part in a twisted game he has built. Before we can do that, the game makes us do a bunch of backtracking. Its main purpose is to give the player more context on the family and attempt to open up some of those optional doors we now have the keys to. Before we move on to Lucas' game, I think I should also state that this whole backtracking to the main house is very reminiscent of Resident Evil 1. After leaving the guardhouse in the original game, you return to the mansion to use keys to open doors to areas. I feel it's handled better there though, as it opens up to completely new areas and even incorporates a second boss fight against Yawn the Snake. However, 7 chooses to handle it in a much more weird way, meaning you go back to a lot of areas you've already been in, so it feels more like padding to add to the runtime. After grabbing the stuff we needed from the house, we enter Lucas's game area. This area is clearly meant to be parallel to the source areas in the way that you kind of have to make your way through traps while a madman provides twisted commentary. Within this area, we also have ourselves a barn fight against a new moulded enemy type and enter Lucas's final game. This is by far one of my favourite puzzles in the whole game. It's like entering a twisted version of escape room where even if you do end up escaping, you still die. But we're successfully able to find a loophole in Lucas's game, and we escape the area to find that Lucas has fled. But now we have both parts that are required to make the serum. We find Zoe and Mia, but before we can get Jack charged in, we have ourselves one more showdown. But in this scuffle, we're forced to use one of the serums in order to put Jack down. After a choice on who to use the serum on that is so stupid I do not feel like explaining the logic for either choice, we find ourselves in one of this game's worst segments. The boat. The boat segment serves the main purpose of explaining the player the backstory of how Evelyn ended up at the baker's and showing how dangerous she truly is. While this is all good, it does massively slow down the pacing in a game that is generally quite fast paced. The whole section has the player moving up and down the boat just to get fuses and a wire in order to turn an elevator so they can reach the bottom and go save Ethan. But after getting to the bottom of the ship and saving Ethan, we swap back to him and hear that Evelyn is in the mines, so we take down an elevator and fight our way through the mines until reaching a really small lab area. They clearly really wanted to include a lab, as every single classic Resident Evil included a lab as its final area, but they either didn't want to make it a bigger area, or just simply didn't have the time to. But in that tiny lab, we're able to get ourselves a needle that has the ability to put down Evelyn. So we leave the lab and find ourselves back at the beginning of the game, making our way through the house, seeing visions of the beginning sections with Mia, until we reach the top of the house and inject Evelyn, revealing that she was actually Granny this whole time. You know, game, just because I said I hate the trope of little girl enemies doesn't automatically mean I like old women. But she mutates into a huge monster form and we have ourselves a battle, during which she throws us at the house and in classic Resident Evil fashion, an off-screen figure throws us a weapon. Real shame it's not a rocket launcher, could have been a really nice callback, and we put down Evelyn for good. We meet this skinwalker who claims to be Chris Redfield, and the game comes to a close on an oddly optimistic note. So, that was Resident Evil 7. So it's time to ask, was it good, and did it do what it set out to achieve? I think those two things kind of relate to each other in the answer. This game is at its best when it's trying to play on the strings of the original, such as the Baker home and the old house, but does fall short when it starts to try and do its own thing, such as the boat segment. But overall, I consider it a great game. This one is at least one playthrough if you haven't played it before. It's clearly an improvement over Resident Evil 6, and clearly I'm the only person who thought this. This game's success not only led to sequels, but full remakes of the previous titles in the series. But whether those entries were able to stick faithful to the origins of the series or went off in crazy directions is a question for another day. So, you've reached the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts on this game and the series as a whole in the comments. Have a nice day. Bye!